Well, I didn't think I'd have to be making this video. Chris Cornell died. It's been kind of tough because he was always a big influence in my life. Obviously, he's one of the reasons I moved here. Soundgarden was like my third favorite band. I always loved their music, going back the whole time. Nothing to Say, which was like the B-side of their first single, was always one of my favorite songs. So, I think the thing that makes it the most tough is that it was really unexpected. With other guys like Scott Weiland, it was like, you could sort of see it coming. But with Chris, it was just like, how did that happen? Like, why? So, lately they've been saying that it was suicide by hanging, but that it might have been caused by him taking too much of his prescribed anti-anxiety medication called Ativan or something like that. And to be honest, I think that's probably what it was. And I'll get into why I think that a little bit later on. But I wanted to talk about depression and suicide as a whole as well. While I do think that he wouldn't have killed himself without those drugs, I do like and appreciate the fact that people are starting to talk about suicide and depression in different terms now, because no one expected this. Everyone thought that he was fine. Everyone around him thought he was fine. And I think for the most part he probably was. I do think it was the pills. But I like that people are starting to talk about how literally anyone on the face of the earth could be depressed and suicidal, even if you swear that that's not the case. And I think that there's a few misconceptions about depression and suicidal tendencies. One being that you aren't of sound mind in order to be going through that, which is not true. Literally, the people you think are of the most sound mind, the most intelligent, the most calm, the most, anything, the most you look up to, the most who could totally have a grand philosophical debate and like totally have these grand thoughts that are like really intelligent and just really right on there, they could still be depressed and suicidal. I think we need to get rid of this narrative that suicide is something that comes about when someone is just like totally out of their mind, they're not thinking straight, they're crazy, yada yada yada. It could totally be someone right here, right now, who you think is just like awesome and great and like totally with it. So that misconception needs to go away. Another misconception is that they like to say the phrase, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. There's a big problem with acting like it's temporary. I'm not going to speak for literally everyone who's ever been depressed or suicidal, but for a lot of people, it is not under any circumstances temporary. It'll either last many years, if not your whole life. A lot of times it comes in waves where you'll be feeling worse off for a bit and then better off for a bit, but you won't not be depressed or suicidal. It'll just kind of be in the back of your mind, but you'll be able to deal with it. You might have times that are better for years. You'll be in a better spot, but then something could happen to make you feel bad again, and you could be right back in the bad, deep spot of it, because it isn't just something that magically goes away like that. Maybe for some people it does, but for a lot of people it is not just something that'll go away. It's something you have to struggle with for many, many years, if not your whole entire life. So we need to get rid of that misconception that somehow it's just going to be better soon. Like, you can get through it. You can live with being suicidal. You can live with depression, but it's not going to just, most likely won't just magically go away. And I think that's something people are starting to realize now. Another thing is that people act like, because there are things like therapists, psychiatrists, mental hospitals, and antidepressants, that all one needs to do is go and do those and then they'll be cured. So this kind of ties in with the last thing I was talking about. There isn't really a cure for it. It can just be manageable. It's kind of like, what is that? Diabetes, where you'll always have it, but you can manage it and you can live on it. Now, it's a good thing that there's help out there, but it's very, very possible that one can try everything under the sun and it can still not help them. And another thing I want to talk about is the person who created the Semicolon project, which was like a my story's not over suicide prevention type of thing, they killed themselves too, even after that project. And people were shocked. And I was thinking, well, yeah, if someone's suicidal, they're not going to just get over it like that. People were actually expecting this person to be totally fine afterward. And that kind of shows us, like, oh, wow, we really don't have that narrative of we need to stop acting like this will just go away like that. Or like, like 5 years from now, you'll just be fixed. You'll be perfectly fine. Like, that's probably not going to happen. You can easily still have these problems for many, many, many years to come. So even if you take antidepressants, even if you are locked up in a mental facility for a year, even if you go to a therapist for many years, even if you have all the doctors in the world check you out, you could still potentially be depressed and suicidal. So we really need to stop acting like this is just something that will be fixed easily or be fixed at all. Now, to get back to Chris Cornell specifically, I do think it was the Ativan, because pills like that, it's so ironic. And me and like my family members always joke about how ironic it is. Literally every commercial for any antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication will say that the side effects include suicide. Like, it's just that one weird thing in life, right? It just, yeah, literally anything you take to try and help you not be suicidal could actually end up making you suicidal. Even stuff that's like not necessarily like depression suicidal, like anxiety is a little bit different, but you could totally end up being suicidal specifically because of those pills. And I've seen firsthand account of like how prescription pills can mess with you, because there was this one time that my father, it was like the middle of the night and I heard loud noises coming from his bedroom, so I went to check up on him to see what the heck was going on. He was like talking to my brother, but my brother wasn't there, so he was like literally trapped in the closet, rolling around, even though it's a small closet and the door was wide open, and he was literally a foot from being away outside of the closet and talking to my brother, even though my brother wasn't there, because he was hallucinating from his prescription antidepressant, you know? So imagine if he had been hallucinating that he was killing himself instead and like actually killed himself because of it. So I can totally 100% believe that Chris Cornell taking too much Ativan is specifically why he killed himself. Because prescribed drugs can totally mess with you, especially if you take too much, but even if you don't, doctors don't always know what's best for you, and they can still prescribe you something that could still mess you up even if you take the recommended dosage. So he did tell his wife that he probably took too much Ativan, so that just makes it worse. That's like, I almost guarantee you that's what it was. I almost guarantee you he would not have killed himself if it weren't for that Ativan. So while I appreciate all the talk of suicide now and starting to actually have this discussion of it's not something that just goes away right away, it can last your whole life, it's not temporary, it's not something that only exists in people that are showing obvious signs of it, it can still be there even if you totally would think that this person's fine, stuff like that. I do think that in Chris Cornell's case, that's not actually what happened. And I do think we also need to have the talk of prescription pills can seriously mess with you, even if the person taking them thinks that they're just going to be fine and it's like not going to hurt them. So yeah, I think that's another type of scenario we need to really be thinking about. Like, how far do we have to let pills that are prescribed by our doctors hurt us before we really start admitting, hey, look, this isn't automatically okay?